In this video, we're going to use Repoman and Composer to start a new Modx package that you can version control and install and manage with Repoman. So the first thing you want to do is pull down a starter repository. And I'm going to issue this command, composer create project, and the name of the repository is craftsman coding /repo starter. And we need to include this, prefer dist. Sometimes that takes a tick to install, but it pulls down this repository without any Git information associated with it so that we can use it for our own repository. If we look at this, we see that we have the repo starter. The very first thing I want to do is rename that. So MV would be command line to rename it. Repo starter, I'm going to call this golden template. Or maybe golden template, maybe I'll keep the dash out of it because sometimes that can be problematic in the Modx namespace. The very next thing we want to do is update our composer.json. So I'm just going to edit that in line. And up here is probably one of the most important things is the name of the package. And that's usually your Bitbucket or GitHub username as the vendor and then the name of the package. You can update the description here as you see fit, but really one of the most important things other than that for Repoman is this extra block, because that is where we can put variables so that Repoman can see them. The category is used to group elements, and I can use a space in that. And then the next thing I need to look at is just browse through this. Assets is where we can put in CSS, JavaScript. We're used to that. Docs is for documentation. Always include good documentation. The lexicon would be for translations. The model would be for any custom classes for interfacing with the database, but it's also a good place where we can put seeds, and this would be good for any other Modx objects. We don't need the menu for this, but we could customize system settings here. So I could add a system setting here for a golden template. And we want to copy for namespace what we use in our composer.json. So golden template, no spaces. Use that here and just be consistent about it. It helps keep things organized. And now when we import this, it will create a system setting with this key and these descriptions. Really though, what we want to do in this tutorial is create a template using a template variable and a snippet. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the chunks and the plugins. Remove those. Let's just start with the snippet. You'll notice that Repoman supports these doc blocks. So this is a way to document your code and have Repoman import that stuff directly into Modx. There we go. And I'm going to update the file name so it's consistent, so we don't get confused. And then we'll actually do the code, year, month, day, say. And this next little bit confuses some people, but let's just grab the namespace and I'll show you the pattern you should follow. First, we need to replace the instances there so it follows our namespace. There's a link here to the wiki page if this doesn't make sense. But one of the most important things to do here is including the autoload file. And this is a file that Composer generates to find all your other classes. It's hugely useful. So even though we're not using any other dependencies here, it's a very good habit to get into to locate your autoload and include it in your snippets and plugins. And as long as you follow this pattern, Repoman will do the rest. Let's look at the templates. I'm going to rename this file golden template. And then I want my template name to follow the file name just to be consistent. Although Repoman will defer to this, and if it can't find a template name, it'll look to the file name. It tries to fail gracefully, but keep it consistent and you won't have to figure that stuff out. So example template, and we want to use one TV here, and this @TV's doc block attribute lets us list them. So Maybe we'll do one called special footer. So I'm going to copy that and we're going to reference it down here. Maybe we want to put in our current date snippet at the bottom. And let's go set up our TV named special footer. So we'll go into here. I'm going to rename this to keep it consistent. Special footer, and then let's take a look at this. It's very important that the name here matches the file name exactly. I'm just going to update these attributes. Special footer. Might have some example here. Okay, but after we've done all this, we've got basically the gist of our template with a few extras. And at this point, you're probably ready to commit this to GitHub and start version control on your project. So to keep this realistic, we're going to go to GitHub and we're going to create a new repository. We're going to call it Golden Template. And this is just going to be an example. But we'll create this. And it creates the repository and it gives us this URL. And then back on the file system, if I'm in here, this is where you could use a GUI tool, but I'm a command line guy. I think it teaches you better habits here. We're going to git init this directory. So it creates an empty repository then. And we need to connect this local directory with GitHub. And to do that, we need to have this URL. So in the file system, in our special directory here, git remote add origin and our git URL. Now the two are connected. I can do git add, and we'll add everything to the commit list. Commit with a message, first commit. It's added all that, and then I can do git push origin master. Or git push usually has the behavior we want. Back on GitHub, if I go to my list here, you'll see that everything got pushed up. So I'm version controlling all my stuff. Great. Now let's get it into Modx. And that's where Repoman comes in. So back in the file system, we need to run Repoman install on this directory to get it into Modx. If you remember from the previous video, I needed to do git from my local shell because that has the git permissions. But for Repoman to run correctly, I needed to run it from my remote server, my virtual machine, because that is the instance of PHP, which is connecting to Modx and from which the website comes. So I need to run Repoman from this other tab. So I'm going to go into Golden Template, make sure everything's there. Yep. And now I just need to run the Repoman utility. So I just need to supply a path to it. In this case, it's above this directory. And I need to do install. And I say install this directory with the dot. So Repoman runs. Did I get anything? Let's see. Error. Uh-oh, I got a couple of errors here. Special footer. What did I get here? Grep R. Oh, it's because I ran a previous example of this before I started recording. But in any case, that shouldn't affect you guys any because you haven't done this twice. But it just goes to show that if you try to install the same thing twice, you may get some errors. Here I am. Now in Modx, and you'll see that all this was imported. I have the current date snippet. There's my code. I've got a template variable for special footer, and I've got a golden template. Now if I look at this, it should have connected that to the template variable, and it did because I listed it here. So just that little bit of common sense documentation is all that Repoman needs to make sure that this plays ball inside of Modx. So immediately I've saved tons of time. I can go ahead and develop my awesome template here, and I can version control it, push everything up to Git, and then once I'm done, I can run Repoman again, and I can build this out using the build command, and I can build this into a Modx transport package. And there you'll see that it's created that transport package. I could take that transport package and install that on some other site, for example, the production server, and all this stuff would show up on that remote site. So hopefully that makes sense how this works together. There's a couple other little tidbits here that I could explain. One of them that is sometimes confusing is this referencing of the assets URL. We'll see that we do need to use the golden template.assets URL. It's a system setting that You notice I could do that over here too in my editor because this is all using static stuff. But if we go to the system settings, Repoman creates system settings for everything in development. So in particular, we have this one, assets URL, and it's pointing to the correct spot so that I can use that inside of a current page. We'll change this to use the golden template. We should get template variables. Yeah. Save that and let's view this. Let's see what we got. Okay, we're getting there. We got our hey there. We got our current date. And let's view the source. Just to make sure that this, yeah, it's pulling in our CSS correctly. So hopefully that makes sense. All that stuff Repoman did for you, and you still get to easily push all your code up to GitHub. And it builds it, and when this gets built, Repoman is smart enough to swap this out with the production value. All you have to do is follow the conventions that are outlined on the wiki. So that's my little tutorial of using Repoman to build a custom Modx package. Happy coding.